get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
And welcome in. Appreciate you being aboard with us on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by my longtime partner in crime, Phil Byrne. And Phil, I appreciate you bearing along with me. A little under the weather, playing through pain, whatever you want to call it. I know it's not easy on the ears, but I'm going to be counting on you to kind of lead this team forward today, my friend.
Hey, Vince, you know what? Any podcast with you, even at, say, 50% voice capacity is better than 99.9% of others out there. You got the gift of the gods with your voice, and even if it's just a fraction of that here for this show, we'll make by. But it'll probably be primarily me talking through some of our segments here. But hey, you know what?
This might as well be the Phil Byrne show in this episode because he's going to be carrying the torch for the majority of it. But as is always the case, Phil, when we signed off from our last episode, not even 12 hours went by, and our star free agent signing from this past year, Cade Mays, 3 years at $25 million to be the starting center of the next handful of years, just went out and freakishly obliterated his wrist in a million pieces. So he's going to be out for, as Dan Campbell put it, a significant amount of time. A typical recovery period for his level of injury is typically in the neighborhood of about 8 to 10 weeks. Best case scenario, that puts him back into the fold by somewhere in that Columbus Day, Halloween ballpark. And that's when he's on the field. Who knows when he's actually worked up to game shape? That could be even closer to Thanksgiving. So, Phil, not the news that anybody last Monday wanted to wake up and hear for themselves getting going on a Monday morning.
No, it's not. It's not. And there's a couple different ways to approach this. We kind of are at a point where it seems this team has been so built through the draft that any high-priced free agent we bring in has a little bit of a curse to them. You look at DJ Reed last year, and he fought through injury. There's been a handful of other guys we've brought in. Any sizable contract of a free agent here in the last couple of years has gone through a number of different cases of adversity, and now we've got Cade Mays. So I think a couple things are at play with the Cade Mays one. The Lions do go physical in their practices pretty routinely, especially since they're not going to be playing, say, 50 to 75% of the ones or the starters in these preseason games. It's dependent on what happens in practice. Like, that is the only opportunity to observe what would be deemed good on good. You get starter versus starter. And it just happens to be, it's in practice, it's not in the game setting. Okay, fine. I mean, that's what it is. But by the reporting and the accounts of what happened it sounds like it was just kind of a routine play, and a defender kind of came in trying to go, up the middle and did not see his wrist. And of course, it just kind of bent and snapped back in a long way. I don't know, can't remember to this point on the clarification if it was the wrist that he snaps with. But yeah, so I mean, he's going to be out an extended period of time. Now, when you hear that time frame, you don't necessarily think of week 10 because, of course, we are still not on week 1. So there are a couple of weeks here before, of course, the regular season starts. But the big thing is we're talking about the center here. So any sort of shotgun formation that we will give in when he is expected to return, there's going to be a grace period. He has not been able to work with Jared Goff unless it was done in the offseason after his signing, leading into training camp for extensive amounts of time, especially going up against, people in pads and opposing defense. That
Exactly. Any work
is,
he did with Jared Goff was with
yeah,
maybe a helmet and a pair of shorts.
yeah, and that's the stuff that you can't replicate. And so much of that center position is based on cadence, it's based on timing, it's based on muscle memory. And these are things that you are just going to go ahead and struggle with. Now, the second half of that is thank God that we actually had a little bit of an investment into this offensive line this offseason. A guy like Juice Scruggs, who we got from the Houston Texans. He may not be, any guy to, great shakes about or, to brag that he's on this roster. He was a throw-in essentially, as well as a draft pick for David Montgomery. But he is a depth piece that does have a little bit of position playing there. He can also play the guard spots as well. We'll see how that shakes out. I do know that we had the center from Alabama, McLaughlin, kind of step in as the starter with the ones because Drew Scruggs wasn't able to go, of course. So his thing was much more temporary. It wasn't anything outstanding. I expect to see Drew Scruggs play against the Commanders on Saturday, but that's literally where we're down. We're having a third center. A guy that, for most intents and purposes, is probably a practice squad player. Getting the majority of the reps in that preseason game. So, it's all about cadence. We've got, I consider, probably one of, if not the very best offensive line coaches in the NFL, and Hank Fraley, who played the center position. So I mean, like he is going to be able to, um, you know, provide some good guidance for these guys. But really, really awful situation, and especially when he was your one big free agent acquisition.
Yeah.
Not a good start.
No, I know they tried this for a little while last preseason. It did not work out very well. At what point do they look at giving second-year guy Tate Ratledge another crack at center?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing to take a look at here. It sounded like um, Tate Ratledge after the preseason game Thursday. So a couple of the practices that they had over the weekend and on Monday when we were recording this, he was actually the one taking snaps at center. Um, it's worth exploring, and I think if we were in a week one lead up or in the actual regular season, I don't believe he would actually be the one at center.
I don't
I
either,
don't
but with all this runway to go before the season starts, I feel like
exactly.
now's the time to see if this kid can do it. If last year was more nerve based than just a straight lack of ability, now's the time to try.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of why he's getting it at this point. I do envision a scenario, though. I still think this is going to be Drew Scruggs, who will be the week one star.
And I would hope that Scruggs plays some level of a role in the offense because let's not forget, he is the return that the Lions got for David Montgomery. So you would hate for the guy
Yeah.
who came back in the trade to just sit there in mothballs. So at least you're putting him to use somewhat. But what really sucks about this whole situation, Phil, is that no other unit in football requires more consistency and cohesion than the offensive line. If there's any hiccup or disruption to the offensive line, it really, boom, just like that, really causes a noticeable difference in how the whole unit gels. And it really takes a long time to kind of get back up to where it needs to be a noticeably well oiled machine. So let's say, okay, we don't see Cade Mays until Halloween. Okay. By the time he gets back out there and is out there in real time with Jared Goff on the field, he's out there in real time with two guys to his left and two guys to his right. It's going to take a long time, relatively speaking, to get on the same page to where it's like, okay, boom, 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 second nature. So we could be looking at, again, possibly Thanksgiving before we get to that point, all because of just one guy being out of position. That's to say that all the other four guys stay healthy up until that.
What you're hoping for, and I hate to say this because he was such a big free agent acquisition, you were hoping for a scenario where Juice Scruggs is so good, and what his contract is at is not anything that's super high powered contract, that he is just as good as Cade Mays, and he is some kind of under the radar gem that we happen to get as a throw in, and he just works out, and this thing's is smooth sailing. The other piece of this that I would like to also kind of acknowledge is the backup center McLaughlin. I feel like I'm mispronouncing his name. Um, Kind of a unique scenario and situation. We have not talked about him really at all in camp. The fact that he was with Alabama, transferred to Ohio State, won the Remington Award trophy with Ohio State. And of course, if you're listening in this part of the country in Michigan, you know that he was, of course, the Alabama center that had all of those bad snaps
Yes.
when Alabama was in shotgun
And that was my
formation.
first thought once I
Yeah,
realized he was the next man up. It's like, really? This is
yeah.
what we got to look forward to next?
So what's interesting though is like you would think Alabama had a system in place that everything was fine. For some reason, he thrived at Ohio State, though. I mean, they just don't go ahead and give the Remington Trophy out to anyone. So I think he's more than capable of at least filling in a backup role. I think he's a guy that I don't think I saw anything that was noticeable on his side that looked like he was, getting outworked or anything like that. This is a guy that has some ability. So, um, I know we gave all this money to Cade Mays, but on the other side of it, there is an opportunity here for these two guys that I think have some ability to kind of show what they got, at least in the next couple of games of preseason.
So we've got a legitimate option with McLaughlin. You got a legitimate option with Juice Scruggs. A distant third would be Ratledge. So it
Yeah.
seems to me, just from looking at it from that perspective, the urgency really isn't on the Lions to start searching the open market for a short-term center solution. Would you agree?
No, and I would say too, I think cornerback is
Yeah.
if you're gonna make a deal, that's the one that I just don't like where we're at.
No, no, absolutely. Let's get to the preseason games, shall we, Phil? So we knew what this was going to be. Lions, Bengals in Cincinnati Thursday night, first preseason game. I was surprised, Phil, to see the starting units out for the Bengals. So the mop up guys got the start on defense for the Lions against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and the rest of the offensive starters got to take the field together the other night. We didn't see anybody of real consequence for the Lions. But what we did see was we got to see a heavily talked about and highly punctuated play with the second year man on the defensive line, Ahmed Hassanin, making a nice open field sack of Joe Burrow on that first defensive possession of the game. So it was nice to see him out there against the Bengals starting offense going out there and making a big impact. He finished the game with 2 sacks. Really hard to take much away from the offense just because we saw nobody that we're going to be talking about on offense, plain and simple, where we saw Jacob Sailors running the ball the entire night. The only guy that we really will be talking about is Isaac Tesla, and it seemed like every time the ball got thrown his way, some level of disaster ensued. So it was overall a pretty forgettable night for him. And yeah, it was 16-14. Bengals won. The only reason the Bengals scored a touchdown was because the Lions handed them the ball on the 4-yard line. Other than that, the Lions did a pretty decent job of containing them between the 20s, it seemed like. But again, it's just so hard to really do a deep dive and take too much away from something like this that's so heavily neutered and watered down, right?
Yeah, and watered down probably the operative word too. It was a rainy situation there, so whatever sort of observations these two teams had to have, of course, you're playing in the elements. You're playing with some ones against maybe at best some twos. I know there were probably even some threes starting the game in some certain situations. The one thing that I do want to point out, though, if you've been kind of listening along to the podcast, um, is of course the story of Ahmed Hassanin, and he has been a standout in training camp by all sense of this. Now, is he playing at a level that like you would go ahead and roll him out week one opposite Aiden Hutchinson? No, but more importantly, to have a guy like that, especially if he is exceeding on the first play of the game, like against a one, that sudden burst or a good changeup to a fastball, like that's what he is. So, um, obviously it's a preseason. You don't want to overexert this guy. He has been a standout, and I think on the other side of it, I don't think we've said it on the show, but I have heard that Isaac Tesla has had a little bit of a rough camp so far. Obviously he didn't have a ton of production last year, but he did make some timely catches from time to time, and it just seems like he isn't really where he needs to be. You look at some of the other receivers that they brought in this year, a guy like Cedric Wilson. Of course, we've got the name is escaping me off the top of the moment here. Played at Purdue, was at Arizona, return guy. He can figure it out after what I'm saying right here. He's also in the mix too. So realistically, I think we keep 5 receivers, and I'm not so sure right now if they were going to roll out 5 receivers that Isaac Tesla is beating those other 2 guys out.
Right.
Like that's how poor he has had of a camp. So, he's still young. There's still ways to go ahead and turn around. You don't want to overreact to maybe the midway point, of training camp or anything. But you're just kind of hoping a little bit more, especially when he is probably you roll out that starting lineup that you had against the Bengals. He's probably the one player on that offensive note, and he doesn't do diddly squat. In fact, he looks kind of bad. So hopefully he can have a bounce back at home.
There's also little clues that are buried in these preseason games as to maybe how a player is doing in camp so far. And one of the little clues that I picked up on was left guard Christian Mahogany was still in this game in the second half. And it makes you wonder. He came on real strong at the end of the 2024 season, kind of leveled off a little bit in 2025, and didn't really seem to be doing all that great in his snaps that he played on Thursday night. So maybe that left guard position is maybe more of a question mark than people were giving credit for heading into camp.
It could be, and I it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I still think he's going to be a starter at the end of the day, just based on who we have in there, unless there's another move that's there to be made. But make no mistake about it, I'm pretty sure he's very well established in the coach's doghouse at this point, being the one player who failed the conditioning test, showing up overweight. That is something that usually you're not going to have a starter play with the twos or the threes unless you're really trying to prove a point. I don't think he's necessarily a cut candidate at this point, especially when you just are dealing with an injury at Cade Mays for another interior offensive lineman. But um, you know, there's a time and place to get in shape, and he was not ready for it. So I'm not quite sure where his work was this offseason.
So basically, summing it all up, our biggest takeaway from Thursday night's preseason game against the Bengals is that DJ Wanham is officially on notice, correct?
Well, hey, listen, I don't know about that necessarily because, of course, you still have Derek Moore too that you could throw on the other side.
When
Um,
healthy.
I I will say this: I feel a lot more confident in our defensive end room than I did before. And for those of you that have wanted a big splashy move, maybe we don't necessarily need to make one now. Although there was a certain defensive end from Eastern Michigan who apparently is getting into fights with Kirk Cousins, and he becomes available.
Although
Well,
some of
then
the
hey,
conspiracy
you know,
theorists out there are saying that was all staged. So who knows?
I guess that would kind of make sense. I mean, Kirk Cousins getting in a fight, like just
Hey, you, cut that out.
you took my lunch money.
I'm gonna do something to you once I think about it some more and pray on it. Yeah, something like that.
You like that?
Yeah, yeah. Good times out there in Sin City. Anyway, back to the Motor City here. So, next preseason game coming up this Saturday at home against the Washington Commanders. Again, don't know if we'll see the. Am I allowed to call him number 5, or do I gotta be hush hush about that?
Hmm.
I don't know.
That is a weird story out
It,
of LSU with Jaden
what do you
Daniels.
think about that, Phil? I mean, at this time of year, you need to have 2 feet on the ground with your NFL team, and to be looking over your shoulder and barking at your alma mater over something stupid. Is that really in the best interest of the Washington Commanders at this point in time?
No, and I think the front office and coaching staff has every right to feel pissed off about it. To me, it sounds like it's like a money squeeze. It's not a sane coaching staff as when he was there. Um, let's not kid ourselves. It's not like he was there for 5 years. He transferred in from Arizona State. I think he was there 2 years,
Couple
maybe.
years, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was 1 year, but it was at least two. Um, yeah, he won the Heisman Trophy and things like that. But like, let's not. It's LSU. Like, they're gonna probably have several more Heisman Trophy winners, over the next 30 to 40 years or something. So to me, it seems like it's just a money squeeze. It's really sad that that's where college football is, and I know we're going to be talking more about the Lions and the NFL on this podcast, but um, it's if your favorite team, if you can name 10 players on your favorite college team, if you're a major program, I think you're doing pretty well with knowing who's on what roster these days with all the movement in NIL and it's a mess. It's a mess.
So in any case, I believe, could be wrong, but I believe we're going to see more of the same from what we saw in the Bengals game. I don't think we're going to really have too much to shake things up too much with what we're going to see from the offensive and defensive packages. But in any case, because it's a Lions home game, I'm sure if you're looking to get tickets, you got to take out a HELOC in order to do so, because that's always the most expensive ticket in town. But I just don't know if we're going to see too much. What have you heard so far, Phil?
Yeah, I think you're kind of on the same wavelength here. I think all the high-priced guys that we now have on this team will not play. But I would kind of like to see, this is a game where if Pacheco wasn't hurt, I feel like Pacheco would be playing. I don't know, maybe JMO plays a series. I think you got to be very careful about
Yeah, yeah.
playing any of these guys. I would say there should be a lot more of the starters on defense that are going to be playing out there. Devin White did play in that linebacker core in
You're
the
not going to see
in the
Hutch. You're not going to see
preseason
Jack
opener.
Campbell, but I think everybody else should at least be a thought.
Whoever they're trying to roll out as the starters in the secondary, they need to act like the starters in that game. So we'll see how that goes. But I think even like Ali McNeil and some of those guys are probably not going to see much. But Tyleek Williams should play, I'm thinking. But
Did I see Anzarike out there the other night? Did they bring him back?
he is on the roster, I think. Yeah.
Because I thought they got rid of him and we were done with him. And then I saw Anzarike on the field the other night. So I was
So
curious as to what that was all about.
okay, I think there was a contract thing that came up right before the draft or right shortly after the draft where I think he had missed enough time that they got him back on a veterans minimum contract or something like that for one
Why
year.
would you? Sure, you can do these things, but why would you?
Because Brad originally took a second round pick on that guy.
You
That's
know
why.
what? You win. You win.
Josh Pascal though not on the team. So yeah, I
Yes,
know he is
can
still.
confirm.
Yeah, so he is not on the team. But um, you know, it would be nice to see some guys that are actually going to play week one, not necessarily even starters, but just week one. Um, play a little bit in this game because I have to imagine it being the second game. Probably the Commanders are going to throw a decent amount of starters out there. And it would at least be nice to have, from what we can see, and you don't have to get out of a practice, see starters going up against starters for some extended period before week one here.
Now, as Lions loyal, Phil, will you be making an appearance at Ford Field on Saturday?
Yeah, I'll be there. Not sure how long I'll stick around, but I will be there. They gave that game to Germany for one of the regular season games. So if I'm paying what I'm paying, I'm committed to it. Plus it's Saturday at noon, so
Yeah, you got the
time's
whole rest of your
pretty
day ahead
easy
of
to
you.
get to. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Let's take a look at the rest of the NFL as a whole, Phil. So everybody has played at least one preseason game so far. We're heading into week 2 of the preseason later on this week. What are some of the things that you've seen in some of the preseason games so far that have stuck out to you or have really jumped off the page?
Um, I think there was the case of Jackson Dart almost getting hurt, or having to
Wow,
go into the
really?
medical tent. Yeah.
That never happens.
No, so I don't think anyone's ever confused him with a rocket scientist or a scholar. So that was something that was kind of interesting. And I think just like, you look at the Giants, they bring in John Harbaugh. I think that on the whole, they've got a pretty solid collection of young talent there. Still have plenty of good talent on that defense. Um, we'll see how far that offense goes. I still don't think it's going to be in the top half of the league. I think some of the other offenses in that division are going to be able to outpace them. So I don't know if they'll be playing catch up or what, if they get behind in some of these games. But we do play the Giants this year, so that'll be interesting to monitor. Aside from that, really hard to tell.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen too many of these games and don't have a cable package that allows me to, you know, watch too many of these preseason games. So just kind of going off the Cliff Notes versions of some of these games. I don't think we've seen a ton of starters so far yet. You know, obviously the Minnesota quarterback thing, that's leading into its own discussion. Not really relevant on preseason, but
But it's still worth
Kyler.
discussing, Phil. This was something
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
officially announced this past week, and it's relevant because we play them twice a year. So Kyler Murray will be heading into week 1 as the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. J.J. McCarthy, who was the heir apparent to Sam Darnold from last year, had some issues with injury consistency when he was healthy, and it just didn't work out last year. So they brought in Kyler Murray for peanuts and cracker jacks, and they decided that what they've seen so far through the offseason up until now, that they prefer the upside, the ceiling that Murray offers, and they want to just see how far they can go with it. Your thoughts, Phil, between the decision to go with Murray over McCarthy?
So there's a couple different things that you can take on this. So one, you know, JJ McCarthy was not asked to really do anything at Michigan. He was the king of the handoff. I think on average, he averaged under 200 yards passing per game. I think it was in the 150-yard range.
And he knew
Not
all the
asked
other
to do
team's
much.
plays.
He did. They had a stellar running game, stellar tight ends, stellar offensive line. He was literally in a prime scenario to do what he did. They won the national championship. Minnesota Vikings take him in the top 10. I think was it pick 9 actually?
10, I feel like.
Maybe 10.
That 9 would have been way too convenient.
But it was a run on quarterbacks, and they liked some of the potential there. he cannot hit the broadside of a barn. His timing, his accuracy, his touch or lack thereof, he just simply does not have it. He is a good athlete. Like, I'm not gonna, hide around that fact. He can run around a little bit. He's got good size. He's got some things that are prototypical in some elements of it. But simply put, from a passing standpoint, he cannot make the consistent throws to be a starting quarterback in this league. On the other side of it, Kyler Murray, coming out of Oklahoma, had all world potential, a true game changer. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals, one of the most maligned franchises in the NFL, if not all of pro sports. Never had the offensive line, started to get some decent skill position players around him. I don't think he really ever had a great running game besides him there. Never really had a good defense and always playing from behind. Very, very inconsistent with things. So now he goes over and he joins who I think is one of probably the top 5 coaches in the NFL, a good organization. Um, this just seemed like it was heading in this direction. Now, he doesn't have a long term deal or anything like that with the Vikings. I think it's just a 1 year deal.
Yep.
But he has a little bit more of a proven track record. He definitely has a lot of flaws still. I think he's far from being anywhere close to an all pro or even playing on a Pro Bowl level. Um, really good at extending plays. I think he can operate with what's being asked. And I mean, he's got Justin Jefferson to throw it to him. So, I mean, like, he can throw to Justin Jefferson. So, I mean, like, he's got some things to work with there. I still think if they're going to have success, it's going to be that defense is putting that team in positions to win. I think Brian Flores, for my money, still probably, if not the best defensive coordinator, 1B as the
Agreed.
best defensive coordinator in the league. I know I always get worried every time we face the Vikings because of that defense. So we'll see. I think it's a much more presentable team and something that like you actually have to game plan with Kyler because he can do things. Whereas JJ, he can't throw the ball. So I mean, it gives your defense a lot more advantage.
It still gives you something that we haven't seen, though, because you talked about a high volume receiver in Justin Jefferson, a big, dependable target in Jordan Addison, a good tight end. You've got weapons on this team. The question is, can Murray make it less about himself and more so about being a facilitator, setting up these big playmakers instead of trying to do too much like he fell into that trap of way too often in Arizona?
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the question. Like, that's going to be because, like, this, I think they're a good team. I don't think too many people are picking them to win the NFC North. I think it's quite honestly either us or the Bears. Maybe some people are still feeling the Packers to win it. I don't think too many people are picking the Vikings to win. I don't even think it has anything to do with the quarterback position per se. I think they just have some questions. They've lost some players over the last couple of years. I think what's going to be the real litmus test for this team is if they go on a losing streak, what is Kyler Murray's demeanor and approach on the sidelines? Is he going to be someone that can be settled down? Is he someone that is going to be despondent and just, checked out? That's what we're going to have to see.
And then conversely, what kind of leash is he going to be on? How much runway does he have before he gets pushed aside and they go back to McCarthy?
I'm going to be honest. I do not think J.J. McCarthy starts another game. I think he's done.
Really?
I think that is that. He is at that point where I think the Vikings made this move because they needed someone. It will have to be an injury situation to get J.J. McCarthy in the game. This is Kyler's team at this point. They made this decision several weeks back. Like, this is something that, you look at from what the reports are from who's taking reps in practice, and it's like 80-20. JJ's he's there, and he's not really doing much.
Phil, I'm going to do you and everybody else a huge favor, and I'm going to stop talking so people don't have to hear my raspy-ass voice the rest of the day.
Oh, Vince.
Good enough?
Good enough.
That's it for us here on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Thanks for trudging through this episode along with Phil and myself. Don't forget week 2 of the preseason straight ahead. Phil and I will be here to break that and much more down with you next week on Kneecaps for Breakfast. For Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, or down the field, over and out.